Good morning. How's everybody doing today? Hope everything's going well for you so far. Hope you have a great day. Let's get this day started by taking a look at the 35th Psalm. We'll be picking up in the 11th verse, 35:11. Again, this psalm is a psalm, a prayer that David offered up as a prayer for against his friends or former friends who had now become his enemies. Again, they were once, according to First Samuel, they were men who he had served with in Saul's army. And so they had been fellow warriors, but now, because of Saul's anger and jealousy, as he pursues David, they have become his enemies. And so David is going to pray, and the psalm shifts gear a little bit again here in verse 11. Verse 11 takes kind of a courtroom scene, and David is going to become the witness, if you will. He's going to begin giving his testimony. He's telling God what his enemies have done to him. And one of the, again, we've been talking about a good bit up until this point, that this is an imprecatory psalm, where the psalmist, in this case David, calls out for judgment and punishment against someone. But beginning in verse 11, we lose that tone. We lose really any emotion. If you look at it, it's going to be very straightforward, very just here, kind of the old dragnet scene from years ago, just the facts. And so getting in verse 11, David really doesn't offer a lot of emotion, no anger, anything. It's just, again, he lays out the facts as he sees them to God. And so he begins by accusing them of lying about him. Verse 11, he says, false witnesses did rise up. They laid it to my charge, things that I knew not. And so that verse is pretty straightforward in what David is accusing his enemies of telling lies against him, of things that he says that he knows nothing of. The charges, what they're accusing him of, the slander, the false accusations that they're making about him. He says that they have no base in truth whatsoever. They rewarded me evil for good, to the spoiling of my soul. And so he continues by saying, I've done them good, and they have done evil to me, to the spoiling of my soul. In other words, I've done good, but they have done bad to me, to the point of putting me in depression or discouragement. They've done evil to me for the spoiling of my soul. That's what he means by that phrase, that they had done that he had done good to them. He had done nothing but good to them. He had fought by them. He had been kind to them. He had done all those things. But now these same men were trying to kill him for no reason. And the word spoiling there is pretty much the most intense Hebrew word in the Old Testament for grief. And so David says, their attacks on me has brought me great grief and pain, even though all I did for them has always been good. But as for me, when they were sick, my clothing was sackcloth. I humbled my soul with fasting, and my prayer returned into my own bosom. I behaved myself as though he had been my friend or brother. I bowed down heavily as one that mourneth for his mother. What David is saying there in that statement is he says, when they were hurting, I took care of them. When they needed help, I was there, and I took care of their hurts and their pains, and perhaps again, they had been fellow soldiers in Saul's army. Perhaps when they had been injured in battle, David had taken care of them when they were injured, and that he had ministered to them in their hard time. And he says, "But my prayer was returned into my own bosom." What he means by that is that his prayers weren't answered. And that he says that he's praying for their well-being, and taking care of them. And he genuinely had concern and compassion for his men. And he says, I behaved myself as though he had been my friend or brother. I bowed down heavily as one that mourneth for his mother. In other words, when they weren't healed, when they were sick and they weren't healed, I grieved over over their injuries. But in my adversity, they rejoiced, he says in verse 15. And so David says, when they were hurt, I grieved over them. I mourned for them. But now, when I'm in a dilemma, they rejoice and they gather themselves together. Yea, the abjects gathered themselves together against me, and I knew it not. They did tear me and cease not. And so David says, when they were down, I was there for them. But when I was down, when they attacked, then in mine adversity, he says, which is the time he's talking about, is when Saul was pursuing him, and out of his anger and his jealousy. He said, when that was going on, he said, instead of coming to my aid, they got together and plotted against me, and I didn't even know it. And they tore me. They ceased not. They ridiculed him, and with hypocritical mockers and feast, they gnashed upon me with their teeth. And so with hypocritical mockers, what a mocker was I guess our word today would be comedian. They basically they got together and made fun of David. They got together and had people get up and tell David jokes and probably do David impressions, and made fun of David in their situation, and they gnashed upon me with their teeth. And I think there's some debate over what David actually means, but I think what he's saying is that they chewed him up and spit him out. And so that's David's case here. That's David's complaint against his former friends, those who he had fought alongside of in battle. And so as he goes to God, he says, this is what is going on. And those verses are pretty straightforward. The imagery, I think, even for us today, is still pretty clear what was going on with David's enemies. And if I may be so bold here on this text, to say to each one of us is to, and I'm trying to be, I guess, nice here, politically correct, whatever, is we should be careful and be aware that those who we consider to be our closest friends, they are still sinners. They're still sinners, and we still live in a fallen world, and so the Bible, in many places, warns us about placing our confidence in other people. People will let you down. People will hurt you. People will stab you in the back, and so we see that in David's prayer here, and we learn that. And I'm not saying we should have no friends and have nothing to do with anybody, but again, I think we learn from David's experience to be careful in who we choose as friends, to look for as godly as friends as we can possibly find. Again, we see David here with his former co-warriors. We see Job's friends as an example of friends who were no help in a time of trouble. Probably all of us have experienced what David has, that the people often that we have helped in their dilemma are the very ones who we cannot depend on in our own problem. And so, several lessons I'd like for us to kind of maybe pull from this little passage of David laying out his case. One of them is to be very careful and cautious in who we put our confidence in and who we trust, who we have for friends. And to recognize, second, that the only person we really can place our confidence in is God Himself. He is the friend that sticketh closer than a brother. He's the one who promises to never leave us nor forsake us. And so the only real friend we have, the one we can really depend on, is the Lord Himself. And then the third lesson that I think would be good for us as believers to take away from this text is to ask ourselves, what type of friend are we? What kind of friend have we been to others? Is the type of friend we are being an example of the love that Jesus Christ has put into us? And so I think that's a question that we need to ask ourselves about ourselves, is what type of friend are we to others? Are we exemplifying? We sing what a friend we have in Jesus. Are we exemplifying Jesus in the kind of friend that we are to those around us? Are they learning about the love of Jesus because of our friendship? All right, I hope you think about that. I hope you remember the words of that song. Again, what a friend we have in Jesus, that there's no one you can count on like Him, but to use Him as your model and your example of how to be a trustworthy and reliable friend to others. Have a great day, and we'll see you back here tomorrow morning.